So, as an artist and a business owner, one of the things that I have struggled with in the recent years has been how to relate to AI and how to bring it into my work in a way that feels authentic but also maintains the integrity of what I do as an artist. And today, what I want to do is explore this idea with you of artist as a receiver and a transmitter and how AI might actually interfere with that, but also how, as a modern business owner, AI can actually be really helpful. And how do we balance these two different streams of impact? Because both can be true. What I have discovered is that drawing inspiration from how ancient cultures approached powerful tools and then crafting protocols for myself, rules that I follow in how I relate to AI, is how I can maintain this balance of keeping the integrity of the human artist alive, but also take advantage of AI's abilities to help me streamline certain processes without getting the two muddied. And that's what we're going to go into today in today's video. So before this video is over, I'm going to share 5 different rules and or protocols, one might say, with you that can help you in your own process in relating to AI. Maybe you can get something valuable from them, but fundamentally each person has to do this for themselves. However, what I want to touch on beforehand is why even go through the work of developing protocols and tools in the first place? Why not just grab AI and go full tilt and take off the brakes, hit the accelerator and create with AI's help? And if you're watching this video, chances are a part of you, and maybe a part of you that you can't even define, rebukes that notion or doesn't feel comfortable with it, senses that something is off somewhere about doing that. Or possibly you do have a very strong opinion about it and you're watching this video just to help you refine your opinion. The reason for these kinds of feelings is probably because at some level you sense that as an artist that there's something important about the work that you do as a human being that going full tilt with AI would interfere with. And I would say that that's actually very true. And so defining this is about understanding the role of the artist and what we are here to do within the context of humanity. What does the artist offer people that AI can't? And that brings us to the role of artist as a receiver transmitter. And what I mean by that is that the role of the artist is to receive something, a transmission, from something that's seemingly non-physical. And what that non-physical space is really kind of dependent on your cosmology and how you relate to it. Some people might call it the universe. Some people might relate to it as the daimon. It could be coming from certain kinds of spiritual forces that you are connected with. Maybe it's even God. And perhaps even the other than conscious mind, or what people call the unconscious or the subconscious. But the case remains that any artist that is truly engaged with the work starts to understand that there's a kind of relationship to some kind of invisible force that gives us a transmission. And in order to get that transmission, we have to be a receiver. And then it moves through us in some way, and then through our own unique set of gifts and talents and style, we bring that as a channel into the world and transmit it then to others who hopefully receive it. And so we play a nodal role in the context of creation, in the sense of we were a node in this consistent process of transmission and reception with the invisible. And this is a key part of what we're here to do as an artist, because it's what allows us to really bring the role of artist as a waymaker, as a way shower into full effect. See, art is one of the things that most deeply affects consciousness. And this could be art that is either written, that is listened to, that is sculpted or painted. And all of these things, they have an effect on the imagination, on the psyche, on perception. And when that happens, it alters the way that we behave and it gives us access to a different set of abilities. What we think of as even possible for us is often affected by the art that we are exposed to in one way or another, which is why whenever you encounter a dictator that wants to take over a particular people, one of the first things that they do is attack the artist. And many revolutions begin with the art of a particular people. That opens up our perception to a vision of what is possible. And as artists, that's what we're doing to some degree or another. And so if we interfere with that process by bringing AI into it, then we are not actually living out our role as artists. And so with that said, with that foundation in place, let's go ahead and move on to these principles and we'll discuss them in more depth. So the first rule that I follow when I engage with AI is pretty straightforward and really is at the crux of the other principles, which is to respect the integrity of the transmission. So that means that as a receiver and someone who gets a particular transmission from the invisible, it's your role to respect the integrity of this dynamic. Meaning that as soon as you start to include AI into this piece, then you interfere with this overall dynamic. So what does that mean? Well, let's say that you're a writer and that your art is expressed through the written word. Well, that means that this particular piece of what you're putting out into the world, the writing piece of it, belongs to you. And we'll discuss that more actually in the next principle. But for now, let's keep this idea in mind. That means that you're a writer. And what that implies is that you will receive the transmission that is meant to move out into the world in the form of words that then you will be inspired to put on paper or on a computer and then give out to the world as some sort of written document that people can engage with, yes? So that means that if you start asking AI to write for you, that you have, in effect, destroyed the dynamic of being a receiver-transmitter. Because your art comes in through writing, that means AI can't be the writer. You have to allow yourself to be the person who does that level of the work. And what that also means is that people who are putting out work, written work, and asking AI to do it are not artists, at least in the context of the written word. It doesn't matter if they think they are because they're prompting AI to generate something written by giving AI a paragraph or something like that, whatever the case may be. But whatever comes out of AI is not going to be true art in the sense of it coming from the invisible and into the visible through a living human being. So I'm going to give you an example of this specifically in the context of something visual, because I'm not only a writer, I'm also somebody who creates visual art in the context of an Oracle deck that I am building. So there's an Oracle deck that I've been putting together for years. It's called the Archetypal Ancestors Oracle deck. And it's been a major labor of love, and I've put a lot of work into making the images. Now, the images are actually designed in a really simple way. I'm using clip art in Canva and then layering them together, many layers. And sometimes putting these cards together takes hours and multiple iterations until I notice that something inside of me comes alive and I go, man, this is it. This is the vision that I received, and now I was capable of transmitting it as the artist responsible for bringing this particular work into the world. Now, let me show you one of these cards really quickly. Now, as you notice, the visual piece of it is not exceedingly complex. Like I said, I put this together with clip art. Now, there's a lot of different layers, but the real essence of this card that makes it valuable is, well, twofold. One is the vision that I had inside of me that I wanted to express. And I got inspiration making this card from speaking to my wife about our relationship and our bond together. I drew on feelings of connection, on feelings of love, on the way that we have related to each other over 20 years of being together in order to put this card together. This is something that AI could not do, that is, draw on these particular kinds of experiences in order to bring that kind of vision into the world. And now also this card is a part of a architecture, a structure that is the archetypal ancestors deck, which has 8 different elemental energies, this one being a part of the wind energy, and it relates to the other cards in the deck in a particular way that also has to do with the transmission that I received about this particular oracle deck. The oracle deck is meant to act as a teaching tool about ancestral wisdom, but also to be a divinatory tool. So there's multiple layers to why I created it, and it's still in the process of being created. The point for me sharing this is to make it clear that something like this is how we relate to the receiver-transmitter function of the artist. It's something I received as a vision that then gets channeled through me and my personal experiences and my personal style and the overall orientation of my work to put together something unique and original that can be of value to the world. This is the work of art. Now, let me show you another image that I created with AI's help that I may use as a background image in one of my audio-only podcasts that I share or plan on sharing through YouTube. So it's kind of like an audiogram. So when I give out an audio-only podcast, that the screen has some kind of movement to it. I haven't decided if that's something I'm totally going to do yet, but I was playing with the idea. And I went to AI and I said, hey, this is what I'm kind of looking for. And so now check this image out. Now, from a purely technical perspective, this image is way more complex than the clip art card that I created. But also, there's kind of not a whole lot of transmission in it, is there? Because I simply asked AI for some things and put it together. Now, here's the thing. This took like maybe 15 minutes to make, and that was me figuring out how to even prompt AI because that's not something I've gone super deeply into in order to create. And the card that you saw took about 4 hours of work, right? So there's a big difference. Even though one is seemingly more simple than the other, because I was acting as the artist, the dynamic was different. And that's what I mean by respecting the integrity of the transmission. Now, that pulls us into the second principle, which is to know what is yours to do. So if you are a receiver transmitter, you have to know what your responsibility is to receive and transmit. And then once you can define that clearly, you're either a writer, you're a visual artist, you're a musician, whatever the case may be, that means then that you can determine where to keep AI at bay. So again, if you're a writer, it means that AI doesn't write for you. If you're a visual artist, it means that AI does not create visual art for you. If you're a musician, it means AI does not generate your music. Now, there are, of course, nuances to this and subtleties, and this kind of brings us into a little bit of a gray zone that is a little bit tricky to navigate. So I want to give you a quick example from my own life of what I mean by some things can be a little tricky and nuanced. There's an artist out here on Hawaii, the big island where I live, that is incredibly technically skilled as a painter. And he's so skilled that at public events, he will set up a canvas that's blank, and within half an hour, there is one of the most complex, beautiful, intricate designs you've ever seen. He's amazing, and he's done a lot of work over the years to allow himself to become a better channel for his art. He is an artist, and he has also explored what it means to be an artist, and we've come to very similar conclusions about what it means to be an artist. That we are receivers and transmitters meant to bring something original and technically skilled into the world. Now, he himself has considered working with AI by feeding it a bunch of his paintings so that it gets his style, and then working with that particular function to what AI is capable of doing, a particular one, to generate a animated video. And then with that, he would then ask another kind of AI to generate music to go with the animated video. Now, that is a tricky situation because what he's creating is with AI, but it's also based off of his particular skill set, and he's not an animator and he's not a musician. So that means that that's kind of tricky because he might be able to generate something really awesome with that that is in alignment with his particular style. But then the question becomes, is creating an animated video and music that goes with it a part of his role as an artist? And I can't answer that. That's something that he would have to decide, but it's one of the things that we might encounter when it comes to this particular aspect of working with AI as an artist, which is taking our art and adapting it to other vehicles with the help of AI. And this is something that people might have to just experiment with, play with, and be authentic to themselves and really listen to whether or not it feels integral to do that. But the principle overall is know what is yours to do. So that means that if you are a writer and let's say not a visual artist, then you can work with AI under certain circumstances to make your written word more appealing with AI art, for example, when it comes to the thumbnails that you choose, which is something even I do. Because even though I am a visual artist, it's more in this clip art kind of format than it is necessarily in creating graphic design. But if I were a graphic designer, then I would make my own thumbnails and not depend on AI to do it. It also means if you're a visual artist and you are not good at writing, then maybe you can work with AI for description for videos, for certain social media posts, for things like that that don't interfere with the integrity of your transmission. Because that means that you can actually get your work out in the world in a way that actually matters and streamline the process. So now, before we move on to the third rule, I want to take a minute to do the shameless plug thing and let you know that if you're appreciating this, I'd love to invite you to come join me at my Substack, eatingancientvirtue.substack.com, and there'll be a link in the video description below. This idea of eating ancient virtue is about taking in the virtuous aspects of our past as a species, both from an ancestral perspective and from a traditional and indigenous culture perspective, but then absorbing and digesting the core essential elements of those sources of wisdom and insight and applying them into the modern world here and now so that we can create a more auspicious future together. And there's a lot of different things that I do within the context of that: courses, guided study paths, resources that I share with everybody, whatever the case may be. There is a paid version and a free version. I'd love for you to just come join in whatever way works for you and to stay connected. So with that said, let's go ahead and move on to the third rule, which is summarization, not creation. So if you are already connected to the first and the second principle, that is respecting the integrity of the transmission and knowing what is yours to do, then one of the things that we can work with AI to do is to summarize, not to create. So what I mean by that is that sometimes I will feed AI a podcast that I made, something that I spoke without its help to come up with the idea of what I wanted to speak out, right? So a transmission that I received on the inside, I felt inspired to share it, I spoke it, and then I might ask AI to take that and summarize it for me so that I can put together a podcast description or show notes or something along those lines that speeds up my process. Because I'm not considering the description necessarily of a short 10 or 15-minute podcast a part of the transmission. But sometimes it is. And so that's what's an important thing for you to figure out. And this is as how we stay attuned to a living process with AI. So sometimes I get a podcast or a piece of writing that I want to do because I'm also an author or something along those lines. And I put it together, but the description also is something that I feel I received in the process. So then I'll take the time to actually write out the description in those cases. And that brings us back to the first two principles we were talking about. So why this particular principle of summarization, not creation? Well, for one, that's what a lot of AI is actually doing as a whole. When you give AI an article and you ask it to generate a book for you, in some ways it's just summarizing and extrapolating more of what you just gave it and kind of just inflating the overall process and fleshing it out, which is not creation. Creation is this rough and in the mud type of process where we're getting our hands dirty, where we're bringing all these different feelings and passions and intensities and experiences and putting in the work like labor, like a mother giving birth. I mean, maybe not quite that as intense in regards to like a YouTube video, but you get the idea, right? There is this process of engagement, but a lot of AI isn't doing that. AI is really just something that's very good at creating associations and then summarizing things and possibly fleshing out that summarization quite a bit. So that's one of the abilities that AI has to help us, is to summarize things and not create them for us. And that's just a little bit of a nuance on the first two principles, but also a way that, for example, as a visual artist, you might be able to maybe feed AI some of your visual art and have it summarize what your style entails, for example, which is something I've seen people do. And then you get a little bit more nuance in words about what your style is about, that then you can share that, for example, on social media to say, hey, my style involves this and this and this and this, because maybe you're more of a visual artist than a word-based artist. But however that works for you, think in summarization and not creation with AI. So the next idea is glorifying analog processes. So what does that mean? Well, a big part of the value of AI as an artist is that it can speed up certain kinds of analog logistical processes. And I've already spoken about a few of these already. One of which, for example, is grammar, to help me with grammar, to summarize a podcast that I made into a couple of paragraphs. But there's another layer too, as an artist, that can be really helpful. Now, as a writer, sometimes I am not sure about what to name something. It was not a part of the transmission that I received. I just got the essential core of it, but not what to title it. And especially not what to title it in today's world with AI algorithms and trying to actually create a title that is interesting to people that they're going to come see. Now, this is again all based on the first few principles and everything we've gone through so far. All of these are stacking on top of each other. Because if I receive a title that is a part of the transmission, like I know that that's the title, then that's the title. And honestly, be damned. Because this is art. Again, we're not talking necessarily about content creation that is SEO optimized and is tagged to all hell and is just meant to grab attention. We're talking about being an artist and bringing something meaningful into the world. So that means that you have to know, again, what the transmission is, how to respect the integrity of it, whether you are summarizing something or creating something, in order to be able to work with AI in a way that is just about glorifying an analog process. So if I am asking AI to feed me, let's say, some title ideas for an article that I wrote, or a podcast that I'm putting together, or a video on YouTube, or something like that, then I will make sure that what I'm asking for was not a part of the transmission, and I really relate to it as a thesaurus at this point, as just a very complex thesaurus, or a thesaurus to pronounce it correctly, that is a lot like throwing a bunch of words in a hat with paper and just pulling them out and looking at them and figuring out, well, could I mix this and this and this and this together to create a cool title, with perhaps a little bit of extra oomph behind it because the AI can look for certain patterns. But that's one of the things that I mean, and that comes back to whether you are asking it to do descriptions for you, or you're asking it to help you create thumbnails, or whatever the case may be. It's really a way to do things that in the past were kind of just analog in a way that's a lot faster. And that's how I relate to it. I don't think that AI is something special to offer me that I can't get from my own process in some other form or fashion. It's just removing the amount of steps I need to take in order to get there. And now we come to the final rule, which is to always say please and thank you. Now, I know this is not always possible with every single kind of AI that's out there, especially like image generators and things like that. But wherever I'm engaging with an AI that has a back and forth kind of function, I will do my best to say please and thank you. Why is that? Well, it's not about the AI necessarily, because at this stage we don't really know if AI is a conscious or sentient being or whatever. It's not about that. It's about you. So I mentioned this in a Sonic adventure that I put together, and Sonic adventures are where I take spoken word and I mix them with music and timing and rhythm and sound effects to create a sonic landscape that is a transformative process in and of itself just to listen to. And I'll share one with you here that is the one I'm speaking about, which was called AI as Soul Reaper and the Death of the Modern Artist. Now, in that particular podcast, I talk about how one of the core themes in the creation of AI has been exploitation and using and perpetually slamming on the AI like you're writing a disenfranchised mule or something like that, right? That you're hitting with a whip and asking it to do more and do more and do more. And it gives us this sense of entitlement that we deserve whatever it is the AI is going to give us, and that there is no consequence to what we do. It's also very much a take and take and take. But one of the principles that you encounter in ancient and traditional cultures is this idea of giving offerings. And that is that whenever you ask for help, you give something in return. And this is especially even truer in today's world where people think they can just take and take and take, and that there's no consequence to that. So I try to keep myself in check and treat AI with respect, the way that I would treat almost any other living being with respect, or even what we might call in today's world inanimate objects. I am an animist, meaning that I believe and apprehend more than believe really that everything in the universe is alive in a way. And so even if AI isn't sentient, I don't really know what to call it if it isn't. Whether it's just some kind of amalgamation of different kinds of programs that ends up giving us something weird, right? Who knows? At this point, I don't. But I know that what I'm concerned about is me and how I treat the world and how I don't want to become exploitative and to take advantage of something. So for me, whenever I ask AI to do something, there's always a please and there's always a thank you, and I'm always polite and I'm always gracious with the tool because that's how I am with everybody, unless they deserve a reason not to be, which is really rare. Anyway, but that's a rule that I have for myself, and it keeps me in check and makes sure that I am giving back at least a little bit whenever I ask for something. Well, okay, I hope you enjoyed this video. One of the last things I want to say is that one of the core reasons to do something like this, right, to have rules and protocols, is because as a species, we have an entire heritage, a lineage behind us of people who have dealt with powerful tools and powerful technology for eons. And in those cultures and in those times and places, people always took care to make sure that there were rules and protocols built around powerful tools and powerful technology so that the power they had was given to those who was ready to use them. Now, that's not something we have in today's world anymore. So if we want to be in alignment with that piece of ancestral wisdom, then generating our own rules and protocols and doing our best to follow them, and of course being willing to make amendments to them when required, is key. All right, my friends, take care.